I'm Clay Archer, CEO DPC Technology, and today we're going to review Ubiquiti's new ultra-budget-friendly G3 Instant and see how it stacks up to the other indoor cameras in the Protect system. Let me start off by saying that we are a managed IT service provider and that we install camera systems for businesses. Obviously, this camera is intended for the end consumer, and so my expectations are really low. But I'm going into this review objectively. And I have to admit, I was surprised by Ubiquiti's other wireless camera, the G3 Micro. I've been complaining that the Protect system needs an inexpensive camera for a while, so I was happy to see that Ubiquiti really tore down the barriers to entry with the $29 camera. While it is a wireless only camera, I'm happy to see that you can power it with a PoE to USB adapter that's sold separately. The camera itself is 1080p and 30 frames per second with built-in IR LEDs. It has a microphone and speaker for two-way communication. It has a 133-degree wide-angle lens, and it comes with an AC to USB power adapter. Connecting the G3 Instant was identical to connecting a G3 Micro. The Unifi Protect phone app is used to connect to the camera via Bluetooth, and then configure the camera to connect to Wi-Fi. After a quick firmware update, we were ready to go with our review of the camera. All right, so let's jump into the cameras real quick. In the top left, we have the G3 Instant. On the top right, we have the G3 Flex. On the bottom left, we have the G4 Dome. And on the bottom right, we have the G3 Micro. I've also got another view here where we'll bring up the G3 Dome. But I think for this comparison, I think these are the four that best compare to one another. Let's start off with the G3 Instant. As you can see, this is a really good image right out of the box. The first striking characteristic of this camera is the width. I can see all the way down to the hull on the left and halfway through the monitor on the right. Really wide, good color. I think the contrast maybe in the lights is falling off a lot, but if I'm just trying to look at an area and see what's going on, I think this is a really nice image and I would be really happy with it. I will tell you that sometimes it breathes a little bit. Quality will kind of go in and out a little bit. It seems like a connectivity, maybe it's a Wi-Fi issue. I don't know if it's the sensor itself, and I don't know if it translates onto YouTube as much as it does in real life. It's not anything that's annoying. At night, it is much more apparent than it is during the day. But obviously I can read far into this eye chart. This is a really good image. If you compare it side by side with the G3 Flex, which I think was probably its biggest competitor at that low cost price range, the G3 Flex, again, is a really good image. I wouldn't be upset with this at all. It's much narrower there though. So you can see on the left-hand side, I'm only getting to the first shelf there. And I'm only seeing 3/4 of that first monitor. So it's a much narrower field of view. But for that narrower field of view, you can see in the eye chart, I'm getting much more detail on things in the distance. So it's a trade-off, and I think, obviously the G3 Flex has been a really popular camera with everybody, and it's been one of my favorite cameras. So to be in that company, it's pretty good. I'm gonna bring up the new G4 Dome, and just to show you what the G4 sensor does in comparison. Same kind of width, although I think the Instant is a little bit wider than the Dome here, but the image quality in the G4 Dome is just superior. I can read much further down the eye chart, especially if I was to zoom in. Also, in the light fixtures, you can see all the detail, so it handles contrast much better. And of course, for the G4 line, I say this in all my videos, the real kicker for me is smart detections. It's just so much easier to find when an event happened with smart detections. And I think the real loser here, to me, and almost getting rendered obsolete, is the G3 Micro. You can see, the eye chart here, it's not much more detail in it than there is in the Instant. There is more detail in the lights, so it does have a little bit better contrast. And out of the box, this image is a little darker. I probably could lighten this up to make that a little bit better, but the width is not quite as wide either. I'm getting almost all of the shelf, but I'm only getting about half of the monitor on the right-hand side. So those things kind of make a difference. And for me, if I was trying to put this in a room and get as much exposure as I could left to right, I think the Instant really wins that battle. I'm gonna edit this view really quickly and I'm gonna bring up the G3 Dome. And just so you can see how that G3 Dome does if I replace the Micro with the Dome in this view. Also, real quickly, when you're moving back and forth in views, it doesn't always take a second or two for that wireless in the Instant to come on. I don't know if that's a big issue for you, but maybe if you had a view with a rotating camera, it would be annoying to wait that 1 or 2 seconds for the G3 Instant to come on like it just did there. But I'm gonna bring up the G3 Dome, and you can see this quality just is the least quality here in the eye chart, and the width is not that much. You know, I really feel like the G3 Dome is a camera that's become obsolete because of the G3 Flex, and the G4 Dome are just better options. And I feel like the G3 Micro is probably gonna be in that same category. Really quickly, I'll go into the camera itself. Okay, so you can see here on the G3 Instant, it's a really nice image, like I said before. I think it's zooming in comparably to the other G3 line of cameras. Really nice. You can see over here on the side there, you know, it's pretty much the same settings as all of the other cameras. Nothing really new over here. It does have a microphone on board, and you do have an ability to change the gain on that microphone. We're gonna do a little bit of a separate test here on the microphone, but I found that it's pretty similar to the other cameras. I did get some questions on Reddit about maybe using this as a baby monitor. I have tested it with the viewport, and I think that that would be a pretty good option if you already had a TV or something with the viewport on it. Sound worked great on my computer. The sound worked great on my Android app. The sound worked great. Somewhere where you had a TV up with a viewport on it all the time and you wanted to use this as a baby monitor or a monitor or something, the microphone works fine. The two-way communication, and I think this has been said in a couple other reviews, is not amazing. And I said this for the other cameras that have the microphone built in and the speaker built in, the speaker is pretty soft. So if you were in a really quiet environment and you wanted to do two-way communication, you could. But I don't think that is a real viable solution for somewhere where you wanted to do consistent two-way communication. Although it is there, it does work. In our environment here, we have a white noise system. So where it's sitting right now, it doesn't work so well because people can't hear over the white noise system. But we are taking the camera into a separate room, and we'll do a real quick audio check on it. Testing, testing, testing. This is a test of the G3 Instant Audio.
Testing, testing, testing. This is a test of the audio output on the microphone on the G3 Instant.
And I also did confirm that it works fine with the viewport on the TV. So if somebody did want to use it as a baby monitor, I think it would be a fine solution for that. Other than that, pretty much everything is the same as you would normally see here, and you can adjust everything to taste as you could for any other camera in the Protect system. So I'm gonna go ahead and reset everything here. And really quickly, to show you that breathing issue, I'm gonna change an option. And when I do change an option, you can see, I'm hoping that translates well, that you can see some loss of image quality. It takes it a second to get back. And then when you kind of get it back, and let's go ahead and I'll just go reset here and go reset and done. That the image quality comes back, but it does have this little bit of an issue there, which I've seen in a couple of different instances where it breathes a little bit and it loses its image quality. But other than that, I mean, I think for the daytime use of this camera, I think it's really an outstanding camera. I think compared to its more expensive brethren, it is performing really, really well. And if I told you that it was a $150 camera, you would say, yeah, looks like a really nice $150 camera. The fact that it's $29 is pretty amazing. So let's go ahead and go on over to our nighttime review of it, and we'll see what it looks like in the evening. All right, here we are. It's now nighttime, and we're gonna jump right into the cameras. I will tell you that Phil is working in the middle of the scene, so you're seeing a little bit of the cast from his monitor in the middle of the room. But the lights are off in the room and it is quite dark. I also have the IR sensors off on all of the other G3 domes in the ceiling here. But let's quickly dive in. The first thing that I will tell you on the G3 Instant here in the top left corner is just how wide it is. It really looks nice at this width. I'm able to see a lot of information in here. And on first glance, I think the image looks really good. If I'm just trying to patrol an area or see an area, I think it's really nice. I will also tell you here that you can see on the pole here that's holding up the eye chart, the G3 Instant is the only one with its IR on. You can see that it has no reflection, but the other ones have a little bit of a reflection next to, or a shadow, I'm sorry, behind the pole. So this was the only one that's its IR emitter is on here in the room. And I think it's doing a really nice job of lighting up this area. One other thing about the sensor that I noticed just right off the bat is that it's a little bit more sensitive in the extremities than the other sensors are. You can see here in the micro that there's very little detail over in these boxes on the left-hand side. Same thing with the Flex. Although it's zoomed in more, there still seems to be darkening on the sides. On the G4 Dome here, I have lens distortion correction off, so it's very, very wide, but it's getting a lot of detail over there on the left-hand side. But I would even say that just at first glance, I think that the the G3 Instant sensor is more sensitive to it. But one thing I am noticing here is that the G3, when you zoom in on it, first of all, it's never as good in the eye chart as the other cameras. It has the least detail at dark, but what I will tell you is that it also kind of breathes. I think it may have something to do with the wireless connection, but as you look at it, I don't know if it's gonna translate on YouTube, but I can see the image kind of coming and going a little bit. Is it a deal breaker? No, but that is a trade-off. I don't think that the camera is consistently as good as the other cameras. I do like its image a lot though. Just real quickly, we'll zoom in on the G3 Flex. You can see how good it does. The eye chart looks really, really good. That's kind of probably a byproduct of it being more zoomed in. That's probably a better focal length for it, but it does pretty well. The G4 Dome, I've done a couple reviews here lately of the G4 Dome. The G4 sensors are just better at contrast, and they're just more sensitive. You can see these letters quite in detail. Obviously, we're not as zoomed in as we are on the G3 Flex, but it looks really good there. And probably, if I'm rating these images, I would see that the G3 Micro just doesn't hold up here. Really don't have any details in these extremities. And I don't know if it's come across, I've talked about this a couple times in a couple different videos, this banding across the video. And I don't know if it shows up as well on YouTube as it does here on my monitor, but there is significant banding going across the screen. You can see the detail is much higher in the letters. Eye chart looks pretty good, but I think the image of the quality of the camera itself is falling down. Just really quickly, I'm gonna turn off the IR emitters in the Instant, and I'm gonna turn on the IR emitters in the, I think the G3 Flex has the strongest one, so I'll just turn them on in that, just to give you an example of how much stronger that particular camera is there. All right, so now you can see the G3 Flex is the one with the IR emitter on. I think the G3 Flex has got the strongest IR emitter of the bunch here, and it looks pretty doggone good. I don't know that it really changed that much from them. So, I think all of them do a pretty good job with their IR emitters. I think the weakest IR emitter here is gonna be the G4 Dome. I've done another video about that IR emitter, and I do think that it's the weakest of the bunch here. Again, I think these are really good images. I think they're all gonna do fine for you. I don't think there's a really big difference between any of them. With that being said, I'm really looking forward to the G4 line of the Instant, the Flex, and the Micro. I think that the smart detection capability is really a game-changing feature. I'll show you really quickly. A little while ago, I had Sean walk in front of the camera and do his thing, and just so quickly, I can just go back to when he did that. I can really quickly see it. He was doing the moonwalk in front of it. It's not very hard for me to go find him. Now, every other image on all of the other cameras, I'm gonna have to go back through timelines and find that. But I can see everywhere where a human was walking around just really, really quickly and be able to pull that out. That's the main feature that I would want in the G4. I mean, obviously the G3 Flex and the G3 Instant here are really inexpensive, so I'd like them to be able to keep that price point. And honestly, if they don't have that and they're $29, I mean, it's hard to complain with what the G3 Instant is doing here for the price. Really quickly before we get out of here, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take the G3 Micro out here and I'm gonna put the G3 Dome in so you can see how the previous generation Dome camera was doing. I tend to discount the G3 Dome a little bit simply because it doesn't compare to the G4 Dome, and I think for the price difference, and I've done this in another review, I would go for the G4 Dome, but just to bring it up and compare it to it, you can see it does a decent job. It is a good camera. I would not throw it out with the bathwater. I probably wouldn't go out to replace this camera. As a matter of fact, I've got them up in the knock here and I'm not going to replace them. But you see here, it does see the eye chart better than the G3 Instant. But other than that, I think it is beating it in every other conceivable way. The width of it, the cost of it. The one thing that I will tell you, and obviously we're commercial installers, the ability to mount things nicely and discreetly with the domes is much higher. It is a commercial product versus the G3 Instant. That is one thing that it's got going against it there, but maybe that's an advantage to a lot of people as well. I will tell you on the kind of throttling in and out of the image here, a wireless access point is right here. It's at 100% signal strength on both of the wireless ones. So I don't think that's a function of its location being too far away from the access point or anything like that. I think that's just kind of the way this camera and sensor function a little bit. I think it's a really good image, and you know, for $29, I don't think that you're going to really complain about it. Is it the best image out there? No. But is it wide? Is it bright? Is it sensitive? Those are really nice features that I think that people are going to really enjoy at $29. And I think this is going to open up the ecosystem to a lot of other people that wouldn't necessarily pay $150 or $200 for the micro, or you know, install domes. So anyways, with that, I think we'll throw it back to the studio. We'll wrap it up and I'll give you my final analysis of the G3 Instant. So what's not to like about this camera? The value proposition is just off the charts. For $29, getting a camera that has an incredibly wide field of view, and really the image quality is comparable to any of the other cameras in the G3 ecosystem, and I would say it's better than most. It's also a great camera for a spot where you can't run a physical cable to, and on top of that, it has two-way communication. But it's not a perfect camera, and who would expect it to be for $29? We did have some issues with image breathing, where the quality would kind of come and go, especially at nighttime. I think that Wi-Fi connectivity could be problematic at times. Also, there aren't very many mounting options. So if you're trying to make a clean, professional install, your options may be limited. And lastly, the two-way communication is a little quiet. But you're starting to split hairs at this point. I am sure Ubiquiti is going to sell a ton of these units. It's truly going to open up the Unifi Protect system to a whole new base of customers. And I'm really excited about this camera. At the beginning, I mentioned that we're a managed service provider and that we sell these systems business to business, but I can see myself putting these in certain areas where maybe you can't get a Cat5 cable to wire it up over PoE, or I don't need to discreetly mount the camera. At the end of the day, I think this is an amazing little camera, and I encourage you to go try one for yourself. I'd like to thank everyone on Reddit, Facebook, and here on YouTube for asking questions and helping me get this content together. If you have any other questions or things you'd like us to test, please put them in the comments down below. Also, I have a link to all the gear we used in this video below. If you grab them there, it really helps us create this content. Lastly, if you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.